almost ready. A little too loud? Just a little? Gong Qi. Sangha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed, Noble, and Perfectly Enlightened One. Namo Sadanto Sucheroye Olahudi Sanmiao Sanputoshe. Wu Shang Shen Shen Wei Miao Fa Bai Qian Wan Jie Nan Zhao Yu. Wo Jin Jian Wan De Shou Chi Yan Jie Ru Lai Zhen Shi Yi. The unsurpassed, deep, profound, subtle, wonderful Dharma in 100,000 million eons is difficult to encounter. Now that I've come to receive and hold it within my sight and hearing, I vow to fathom the thus come one's true and actual meaning. Venerable Master and Dharma friends, welcome to our Sutra lecture tonight. We're here at the Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. We're going to be looking into the Flower Garland Sutra called the Avatamsaka Sutra, the 10 grounds chapter of that sutra, and we've reached the 7th ground of that chapter. We're still kind of at the beginning of that chapter and finding out what the 7th ground is about. And tonight we've gotten up to speed now. These chapters start, the different pieces of the grounds start kind of rolling along, and then they gather momentum, and then they repeat the boilerplate part that each one of them shares, and then whoosh, they're off. They launch into the heart of their respective teaching, and that's where we are tonight. We're right at that point where we achieve orbital velocity in our 7th ground. So, in order to begin, what we do is we invoke spiritual presence, and that's here on the cover, that the words we say are on the cover of our text. So please join me if you care to. We do it in Chinese, and you've got a couple choices there. You can read the Chinese characters if you can, and if you're still learning your Chinese characters, then you can follow the romanization, the romanized ABC sounds. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Ji Hua Yan Hai Hui Ko Pu Sa. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Ji Hua Yan Hai Hui Ko Pu Sa. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Ji Hua Yan Hai Hui Ko Pu Sa. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Ji Hua Yan Hai Hui Ko Pu Sa. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Ji Hua Yan Hai Hui Ko Pu Sa. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Ji Hua Yan Hai Hui Ko Pu Sa. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Ji Hua Yan Hai Hui Ko Pu Sa. I was really happy to see that the men's side filled up so fast, and I realized that only half the benches have been put out. Maybe Simon and maybe John could kind of put the rest of those benches out so people who come in have a place to sit. One thing we can do is put them a little closer together. They don't have to be quite so luxuriously far apart from each other. There you go. Yeah, slide over a little bit. And then we've got, sorry to uproot everybody, but we have the seats. We just didn't put them out. Don't want people to show up and have nowhere to sit. Okay, I think the women's side will be full by the time we're done. Please turn in your text to page 54 and 55. Yeah, there we go. '54 and 55, we've been gradually going through the list of the 10 Paramitas, the 10 perfections. We've come to the end of that last week. Please don't be shy about sitting in front. There are 4 empty seats in front. Master Hua used to really get down on that dharma. He would say, "Don't be so selfish. Move forward. Fill up every seat. What are you waiting for?" He made a big deal out of that one. So. Okay, on page 54, we go down to actually in the Chinese, the second paragraph, which is 佛子慈师波罗蜜. That would be, if you count from the top, line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, line 8. And then over on page 55, the equivalent on the English side would be the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh paragraph. It's disciples of the Buddha. All right. Thank you for rebuilding our seats here. Okay, we ready? Let's do the Chinese, that first paragraph. I'll give you the lines, you give them back to me. 佛子慈时波罗蜜，菩萨于念念中，皆得具足。如是四摄，四持，37品，三解脱门，略说乃至一切菩提分法，于念念中，皆悉圆满。All right, good stuff. Over to the right. Let's do it together in unison. Let's read together. Here we go. Disciples of the Buddha, this bodhisattva in every thought can always fulfill the 10 paramitas. He can bring to perfection in the same way the 4 dharmas of attraction, the 4 supports, the 37 wings of awakening, the 3 gateways to liberation, and so forth, up to and including all the Bodhi share dharmas. Okay. It's all lists, isn't it? What's going on with these lists? We've been working for weeks on this list of 10. And the list of 10 is the 10 paramitas that were mentioned here. Disciples of the Buddha, the Bodhisattva, in every thought can always fulfill the 10 paramitas. Just quickly, because we've done it every week now, paramita is a Sanskrit word that means perfection, brought to perfection. It also means to cross over, to take across. So from this shore, you go over the bridge and cross over to the other side. So paramita is when you get to the other side. You made it, crossed over. You could also imagine being outside the door and taking a step. Now you're inside the room. You're no longer outside. You're now inside. You can take part. You can listen. Alice, please go ahead and close all 4, not just one. Just do them all. It's getting chilly, right? If you guys are cold on that side, close those. Don't feel like there's any reason to be in the draft. All right, thank you. So perfection is going through, crossing over. But it also has the sense of taking somebody else across. So why are there 10 of them? Usually there are 6. In the rest of the Mahayana tradition, there are 6 paramitas, but this is the kind of the hallmark of our sutra. Everything is done to perfection, done to totality. So 10 represents starting over, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, one more step, 10. 0 comes back, and we're going around again. So how about that? We've reached perfection. We've reached that closing of the circle. The circle's been closed. So now it contains. It's perfect. You can't add any more, and you can't delete anything from that circle. What are they? Well, we've been working with that every week. These are, you could say, tools. They're tools because they're meant to be used. And they're used to help people grow, progress, break through, let go of, recover from, heal from the things that afflict, hurt, block, obstruct, weigh down on, and stick to us, right? That's what they are. They're tools that help us let go of things, mostly. But they're for use by someone on someone else, by and large. Or they're used by me on my bad habits, the things that I see I want to change in myself. So bodhisattvas use them for self-therapy, you could say, or for healing others. And when I was growing up, my goodness, there was absolutely no such thing, zero, as the self-help movement. Didn't exist. When I was growing up in Ohio, if you let it be known you were going to a therapist, there was something wrong. Real men didn't admit that, that you couldn't figure it out yourself. You paid somebody to what? Listen to you? What? Man, come on. Throw your money down down the toilet, why don't you? That's pretty much the same. Therapy. Oh, that was a real admission of weakness, right? Couldn't figure it out. Bit by bit, things changed. My goodness. Then it became fashionable to have a shrink. In New York, if you, at that point, this is in the 60s and 70s, it was de rigueur, it was chic to have a therapist, and you had his number, and you recommended him to friends, You paid, the price went up and up and up and up and up by the hour. And the New Yorker magazine was full of cartoons about therapists, and it was really stylish to have a therapist. And if you didn't have a therapist, we were certainly enamored of what Freud called the talking cure, right? Where you told a third party who was trained about your problems, and bit by bit he found a way to help you understand yourself. You're an analyst. You were analyzed. And by the way, I would love to recommend, if anybody wants to find out more about this, there's an absolutely amazing, valuable BBC documentary that's been released to YouTube. It's available on YouTube. It's called The Century of the Self. The Century of the Self. Just go find it tonight and watch. It's not about psychotherapy per se, it's about advertising, public relations. And it's about Sigmund Freud's nephew, not Sigmund Freud, but it begins with Sigmund Freud, who was, you can really point to Sigmund Freud as being kind of the watershed of the talking cure, psychoanalysis. So, okay, where do we get there? Wonderful documentary. It shows it's a 3-part documentary, but 1 and 2 are particularly valuable. Number 3, not so much, because it goes into British politics, and it's interesting if you're interested in why Great Britain voted for Margaret Thatcher and how she was sold to the public as a candidate. So, why I mentioned that is there are reasons for that switch from my childhood, 50s and 60s, when analysis was a sign of something wrong with you, that you needed to depend upon a third party. Just talk to your friend, talk to your wife. Why would you pay somebody, right? To it being something that fashionable and smart people did as it was the normalization of psychoanalysis, psychotherapy, all before the self-help movement, which is where we are now. Century of the Self talks about how the Second World War and the Korean War was a big turning point. The U.S. military invested in psychoanalysis because more and more men, at that time pretty much men, soldiers, came home, which something that used to be called shell shock. Back when I was growing up, my father's generation, the Second World War, if you were mentally injured, spiritually injured by warfare, by the horrible things you saw, that was called shell shock. And at some point, the U.S. military was convinced that there was value in talking to, in hiring analysts to talk to men who came home from war spiritually wounded. And it became a thing. And this documentary shows that. And this is not well known, but they've got the goods. They have the statistics and the stories. So many men who, like my father, decorated war hero, were so traumatized by the things that happened to them during the war that they never, ever talked about it. But it was a major issue in their lives. It was the turning point in their lives. I'm cleaning up upstairs in my room from years of gathered papers by and large. And I found an envelope of negatives taken of my father in the war. And there's one photograph of his B-24 crew, 10 men flying in a B-24, the Liberator bomber. And they're all crouched around their plane that they flew in the air. And through some incredible statistical magic, all 10 men made it through the war. Now, why is that magical? The average lifespan of a B-24 bombardier, pilot, co-pilot, waist gunner, navigator, radio communicator, tail gunner, nose gunner, I think we're in short 2, was about 10 missions, which could be, 2 weeks. That was pretty much it. After 10, 75% of the men who flew were shot out of the sky and died. And these are 20-year-olds, right? These are your sons after 2 decades, 20-year-olds. So these 10 men went up and came back. My father flew 51 missions before he was shot down. So interesting. Those men, the government, the military, gave them analysis before it let them go, before it returned them to civilian life, because many of them came back broken, right? To the point where now, flash forward, the latest on Facebook is what? You do 22 push-ups and tag somebody to do another 22 push-ups. Why? 22 returning vets commit suicide per week? Day or week? Anybody following this one? Yeah, so you do 22 push-ups on their behalf and then tag somebody to do it. PTSD, right, which is what used to be called shell shock, is now getting to be so prevalent among people coming back from Afghanistan, from Iraq, where we're still sending people, from Africa, where they are advisors, from South Sudan, from wherever we're sending men and women now in harm's way. Those who come back, 22 kill themselves every, you going to check that for me, Phil? Every day or week? It's a shocking statistic. Something happens to them in that experience now, that they prefer not to continue. Okay, so what is this about? This is saying we've gone from a time before people even considered that you could be injured invisibly, be injured inside too, not just get blown apart outside, your soul, your nerves, your mind, your emotions get destroyed also, to the point where you cannot heal yourself. All right, so what about us who maybe didn't go to war? 22 a day. How many days a year? How many years? 22 men and women who come back from the military per day in their lives. So the latest thing is you do 22 push-ups and then tag somebody to do another 22. So, yeah, there's something broken there. Anyway, to go from the people who went to war to defend the country, who deserve incredible respect, to we non-combatants who still find ourselves unable to cope. Today, I came down the hall at the end of our big Ulambana ceremony today, and saw a stack of books piled on our pew right outside. You go around the corner of Guanyin Bodhisattva right there. I'm pointing to her. Right behind her, through that wall, on that pew is a stack of books. What are they? Self-help books. They're books, I'm sure, selling well by authors I've never heard of, who graduated from psychology programs in reputable universities, maybe got advanced degrees, and then wrote a book about ways to heal ourselves from civilian PTSD. And I can't quote you the titles, I just flipped through them and saw what they were about. And I think somebody dumped them for our library. Somebody probably graduated from their psychology program and said, what do I do with these books? I don't know. Give them to the monastery, So there they are. There's a stack of them. If anybody wants one, and maybe there was a condition with their offering, I don't know. But sometimes people will just put the books here. Anybody know where those came from? Maybe it was, maybe they forgot them and they're going to pick them up. So I won't send them home with all of you till we find out who brought them here. But chances are they'll be here for weeks and days and months and years. But they're all books about feel good about yourself, and who needs to be sick. And what is it? Hypnotize, self-hypnosis. Don't laugh. Don't laugh. My college roommate, UC Berkeley, Bob, was a PhD in psychology. His father was head of outpatient treatment at Langley Porter Psychiatric Institute in San Francisco, UC San Francisco. So Bob was not going to be a psychiatrist, he was going to be a psychotherapist with a PhD, not an MD, in psychology. He had a wall-size poster of Sigmund Freud on our room wall. Come in and here's Sigmund Freud, bigger than life, looking slightly angry, kind of irritated at you. And my goodness, so Bob had the best training in psychotherapy available to anybody from UC Berkeley. His dad was a psychiatrist, a head of psychiatry. So Bob was really well trained. And in my time with him, what classes did he have to take? He had to take lots of statistics and lots of work with rats, white rats. Never did he get a chance to find out, well, not never, but that was in lab later, about the mind, about the human mind, healthy. He was an expert on psychosis, neurosis, schizophrenia, paranoia, and various afflictions. But only after he met Buddhism did he say, finally I get to study the human mind, healthy, intact, whole, and in depth. Thank you, Shakyamuni Buddha, he said. Okay, so Bob's, his dissertation He went over to Marin County. He chose Marin County to do a demographic survey of basically public mental health. And what he wanted to do, he wanted to help people get well. He wanted to heal people's illness. You know, he didn't want to necessarily study statistics, demographics, and rat behavior. So that was the extent of the teaching. He graduated, got his doctorate, set out in private practice as a psychotherapist, and after 5 years of doing the talking cure, what did he return to as his number one therapeutic tool? Hypnosis. Hypnosis. He said, it works. I'll do what works. I want people to get better. Talking to them has limited success. So analysis is not to say useless, not to say invaluable. It's okay. It takes a very long time. And people talk in circles. But hypnosis, he said, got right to the heart of it. So psychotherapy is merging with the Buddha Dharma. All right? There's a lot. Thursday night, we have our largest number of Buddhist psychotherapists of the week. Every Thursday night, the East Bay Meditation Center, the Insight Meditation Center East Bay, is made up largely. They went through and did some of their PhDs did a demographic study of the group, right? Discovered what? They analyzed them by occupation, and about a third were psychotherapists, interestingly. So what a joy to receive traditional Western training, which is growing and evolving. We've only been doing it for 120 years or so, psychotherapy at all, right? And mindfulness has now made a very happy synthesis. So lots of therapists are going, man, I got my theoretical background with Freud and Jung and Adler, but my practical background is learning mindfulness, learning consciousness, learning the Buddha's therapeutic tools to bring the mind to wholeness. Back to the Paramitas. Okay, there we are. So these are, what is this list? These lists, plural, are the Buddha's interventions, the Buddha's therapeutic tools for what to do when the mind goes into affliction, when the mind goes into emotion, when the mind goes into what was called, in a collective term, ignorance, right? Which means no light. When the mind covers over, here's what you do if you're a bodhisattva at this level. Okay, let's take a look. What is it that you do? Disciples of the Buddha, this bodhisattva in every thought, right? Pay attention there, can always fulfill the 10 paramitas. We've just had 10 one-liners, one-line definitions of what the paramitas are, from giving to precepts, from patience to vigor, from samadhi to wisdom, from expedient means to vows, and from strength to knowledge. Those are the 10. And we've heard about them line by line by line by line, all one-liners. And this bodhisattva can put them to use and get graded, measured, you could say empirical results out of every single one. Just the way a therapist would say, now tell me about your dreams. Have you had that dream more than once? And tell me what you think is important about that dog that chases you through your dreams. You know, and how long have you been feeling that way? Right? The therapist who's doing the talking cure uses those tools. The bodhisattva working where? On the mind, and its healthy habits and its unhealthy habits. Same way. Why don't you practice being a little more generous instead of accumulating? Right, let some of that go, send it out. You know what you're going to feel when you do that? Happy. Giving makes happy. Right? What was the definition? I know what it was. It was sharing the good roots that comes from cultivating wisdom with all living beings. That's the perfection of giving. That's the paramita of generosity, is taking the goodness that comes from the good that you do and giving it away with your mind, sharing with your mind. The Bodhisattva can do that in thought after thought. Okay. At this point, on the seventh stage, the Bodhisattva's mind is a power tool. It's focused, it's clear, it's sharp, it's efficient, it's kind. And this is what he does, or she does, gender non-specific, most of his time, her time. Focuses on this stuff. Because why? It actually helps. This helps the Bodhisattva with his or her vows, V-O-W-S, because the vows are what make this Bodhisattva special. I was recently in China learning about another monk whose name was Jinghui Zhanglao, Venerable Master of Pure Wisdom. Purity and wisdom, or purified wisdom, pure wisdom. And one of the things that he did, his vows had to do with rebuilding. He was in his prime after the Cultural Revolution. And the Cultural Revolution for the Chinese was, now they're, as the decades passed, they're getting more perspective on it. It was 10 years of, you can see it when they talk about it. They don't have a single word for it. They go, those 10 years of problems, 10 years of trouble, 10 years of genocide, not genocide is because it wasn't a single race. It was almost a generation were the targets of the Red Guards and all of that insanity that followed. Buddhism was essentially wiped out of China. The monasteries were burned, the images were burned, the people were executed or sent to labor camps or humiliated or forced to return to lay life. And so when they talk about it, they just they reach for a word to describe what that was. And the strangest part of it was, it came from your own kids. It wasn't an invading army. It was young people who got a virus and turned on their parents and anything old. Strange time in China. So Master Jinghui, seems to be his vows had to do with picking up the pieces, putting them back together. So he rebuilt half a dozen monasteries. And along with the monasteries, the monks who inhabited the monastery. And did it. So I was, along with Jin Chuan, our young monk, I was the guest of the main monastery called Bailin Chansi. And what I saw in watching these monks, you look at the students, you know the quality of the teacher, right? You look at the disciples and you know how effective their role model was. So Master Jinghui he would take these, there's one place in particular that was moving, it was called Yu Quan Si, in a town called Xingtai. Jade Spring. The spring is really there, and the water is pure coming up. He wrote 6 poems. You go through the gate, and the gate has a big pilo, a facade there. And on the back of the gate, he wrote 6 poems, and then did the calligraphy, and they were inscribed up there. And he says, one of them, he says, I can't do the whole poem. It's really worth doing, too. It's very beautiful. But he says, when I got here, there was a broken tree and a couple roof tiles. So I grafted the tree and cast the roof tiles, recast them. It's all been rebuilt, and it's beautiful. inside. It's got a feeling. But he started with nothing. He started with rubble and rebuilt that temple and half a dozen others. So there's somebody who's operating out of vows to rebuild. That was his gift. And the Bodhisattva, in every thought, has a vow to take somebody or some aspect of his own character across. Watching what Master Jing Hui did, you realize he didn't have time to mess around. He didn't do other stuff. That's what he did. He focused on this and got the strength together and got the politicians behind it, local guys, and then went national with it and then built it when the time was right. And then he moved on. And to do that, you don't have spare time. You thought after thought. It's like, yeah, this is the job. We're going to get this done. And one nice thing about that teacher, that Buddhist monk, was his downbeat was practice, particularly Chan. He was a Chan monk. He was Master Empty Cloud's disciple. One of the many. Our teacher is Master Empty Cloud's disciple. And Master Jing Hui, in between putting his shoulder to the wheel, rebuilding these places, meditated. Meditated with his disciples, taught them how to do it, and then meditated. So you'd find lots of pictures of him just really sitting there and then enjoying it. He sat because it helped. It helped. It helped him focus, and it helped young monks go, I'm going to do it that way. Okay, let me see. How am I doing? Yeah. Practice. You look, you'd get it. And then he would talk about it. Lots of talks about meditation. So, people who live to serve. This bodhisattva can bring to perfection the same way the 4 dharmas of attraction. 4 supports, 37 wings, 3 gateways, and Bodhishare dharmas, 7 of those. Lists, these are therapeutic ways. These are all self-help books. But the help that you get from these is transforming selfishness to selflessness, transforming fighting to yielding, and all the relief in your heart that brings when you don't fight anymore. Transforming greed into generosity, transforming seeking into satisfaction, sufficiency, transforming the need to own to a sense of sharing, and the body that it shares is part of a bigger body by doing that, and then transforming dishonesty into transparency, where thought, action, and word are united and clean and simple. That's this crossing over, taken across. So what are the 4 dharmas of attraction? These are self-help tools so that the bodhisattva can connect. If you don't connect, if you're a soloist, if you're a hermit, never mind the bodhisattva path, you're going to be lonely. You're going to not have anybody to take across. So the Paramitas don't even get invoked, engaged. So what are the 4 dharmas of attraction? They're the ways that the bodhisattva gets close to people. And if you're a grade school teacher, high school teacher, if you're a person in the healing profession starting out, you need some clientele, you need some sick people, go to Louisiana. Lots of work. Baton Rouge, our second Katrina, didn't make it onto the news cycle. Imagine 40,000 people, 40,000 homes, not people, 40,000 homes with muck over your precious furniture and favorite sofa. All of your musical instruments ruined. All of your foodstuffs, everything that you didn't put up on the counters now got mud, and all the rice and all the potatoes and all the beans. And imagine coming home and just thinking, who's going to pay for this? 3 out of 10 people had flood insurance. 75% did not. So who's going to pay for that? And it's just rain. It wasn't a hurricane, it wasn't a storm. I mean, it was a storm, but it was rain. Man, oh man. So, if you're someone who is needing to connect with people, or able to connect with people, but you find yourself disconnected, and we're not talking virtual networks, it's not social networks, not Snapchat, we're talking about real people, what do? The Bodhisattva does 4 things. Gives, speaks kindly, cooperates with people, and gets involved in work with them. Benefiting. Finds himself in service. That's number 4. Finds herself in service. Giving. Give to people. Somebody walks in with delicious food and sets it down. Wow, everybody's like, pizza? Oh, that hits your nose, right? Somebody comes in with a chocolate cake with cherry frosting. Punk, everybody's, whoa, oh my. Nobody's watching who's counting calories. I'll take a little bit bigger, they cut that one. There you go, yeah. It's like you bring food in and everybody's like, oh, that's nice. Yeah. What happens? They remember. We remember. It's not an idea. When you put delicious food on your tongue, it's like your body goes, Then you connect with the donor. Who knows that? Buddhist monks know that. Why? Every single day we have the experience of somebody contributing to our very lives. Here it is, Dharma masters, right? So Buddhist monks and nuns have the experience of gratitude every single day. Now we particularly, because we eat once. In our tradition, our monks don't eat breakfast, don't eat dinner, we eat lunch once a day. And so when that food comes in, we're like, another day we get to, have some food in our stomachs. We fast 23 hours a day, every day of the year. Interesting state of gratitude. Gratitude, because why? We connect directly with who keeps us alive. And boy, does that make the food taste good. We never don't have sauce of gratitude on top of our food, because it's not easy to put that food on here hot, the way we like it, without onions and garlic and meat and fish and dairy and tobacco and alcohol and all the stuff we don't eat. Here's perfect, that food. Step outside and try to find food like that. Oh my goodness. It's hard. Travel through Japan and try to get real vegetarian food. 難しいですね、ここで. Everything's got fish sauce. だしの素、魚にあるございます。すいませんが、ベジタリアンじゃないでしょ。ベジタリアンそうです。そうじゃないよ。何? Right? It's not vegetarian. Yes, it is. No, it's got fish in there. No, everything has fish in it. Right. That's the point. Why are you so complaining? Your monks are supposed to be grateful, すいません. That's hard in Japan. So, it's growing. I've been told that there's actually now more and more vegetarian food in Japan that doesn't have fish in it. So, but by golly, we are grateful for the food that comes every day. That's not easy. Really special conditions. So, that's the first one, giving. Guess what? We remember who feeds us, boy oh boy. We're aware how hard it is to provide that food for monks. There are families who have been doing it for years, feeding us every week. They don't forget. They forget one day, we're like, It's okay. No, we don't want out. It's okay. Ring. We get to eat today. You know. They're just a little late. Big traffic on, on the Nimitz. So, yeah. That's number one. Number two is called kind words. And wow, you can see the effect of kind words versus harsh words on young people. If they know they've messed up and they're going to get scolded, they're in trouble. Oh, you're in trouble. Mom! He's in trouble. And then mom says, no, actually, it's okay. Oh, kids, when they're not in trouble, because they're in trouble, the whole world is like, uh-oh. And then when they discover they're not in trouble, if mom speaks kindly, now, I want you to remember what that felt like when somebody took your bike. You took your brother's bike and didn't tell him, and he was all upset. Remember when somebody took your bike? How did you feel? Not very good, right? That's how your brother felt. Oh, right? Kind words that have a principle, you never forget them. Never forget them. So, kind words are so powerful. When it comes from somebody in authority, when a uniformed police person, right? Uniformed policeman comes up and you're driving along and that light behind you, you pull over and the officer comes up and says, I just wanted to let you know that your tail light's out. Better get that taken care of, keep safe. Kind words. How often do we hear those? Well, depends on the officer, but my experience is that given the benefit of the doubt, they're mostly there to serve and protect, given certain circumstances. Mind you, that's from a white person's point of view. So, kind words have an incredible power to open the heart. And when those kind words come from a kind heart, we feel it. We sense the connection. And, we're mentioning him again, Dr. Emoto, a Japanese scientist, some people say pseudoscientist, who took photographs of frozen water crystals. He died, we discovered. We looked him up the other night. Dr. Emoto is no more. The Messages from Water doctor, it was a huge, huge hit in Asia first. He's Japanese. And remember in Taiwan, wow, there was a couple years when that was the big book. What was the name in Taiwan? 中文名字叫什么？水之什么名字忘了. It was a huge, huge hit in Taiwan. I mean, everybody was talking about it. And Dr. Emoto would speak kindly to water and then flash freeze it and photograph it. And go online. I'm not suggesting you do, Phil, but you can go online. One could, theoretically. Go online immediately. And if we had our computer, I would show you, everybody. He would say something like, I love you, right? And then say it to the water and take a picture of the crystal that he flash froze and sliced. And the crystal is like a jewel. It's like a gem. It's all perfect, hexagonal, octagonal. Heng Sure and I looked at those pictures last time I brought this up, last week or 2 weeks ago. And it's just astonishing. And then he does the opposite. He says harsh words. He goes, drop dead, you rotten human being, and does the same thing, freezes the water, slices it, takes a picture of it, and it's just all contorted and ugly and twisted, and you go, oh. And, of course, scientists challenge it, and they say, pseudoscience, they say, there's too many variables, not trustworthy and all, but it's pretty amazing. He does other things. He plays Bach to water, and you hear this beautiful ba da dee da 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 dee 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 ba 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 dee da da dee da da dee da 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 dee da da dee da da. and takes a picture, freezes it. It's like, it looks like an artist did a magnificent sketch of heaven, you know. And then he plays, he plays Black Sabbath, and he takes a picture, and it's all twisted and distorted, and no slack. There are Black Sabbath fans here, I know. I don't mean to slander Black, but he plays some really nasty rock music from death metal, and people he shows the crystals, and the crystals reflect this angular, sharp, jagged, twisted crystal. And he says, yep, kind words, harsh words are picked up in water. We are mostly water. Think of the effect of your words on children, on impressionable people. So folks who have experience with hallucinogenic mushrooms, for example, done in a scientifically controlled environment, of course, but things like ayahuasca, this psychotropic mushroom, it's a plant, it's not a mushroom, it's a plant, report that once they are opened up, they say, I read the story, and I talked to a friend in Australia who had been given a cancer diagnosis and went down seeking shamans to have this experience before they died. In fact, they didn't die, but they reported the experience. This came up in my meditation group. And he said these psychotropic drugs called entheogens in general, God-inducing chemicals, or the when it's distilled, it becomes a chemical. It's an actual organic plant. He said, when you are open in that state, having gone through all the very uncomfortable preliminaries to getting there, lots of vomiting and purging, he says, a single harsh thought is too much to bear. Once you're open and you've lost all, you dropped all your filters, he said, having had that experience, he never, ever, ever again wanted to use profanity or even harsh thoughts. He said the effect on the mind of a harsh thought is, once you see it, starting from kind of zero, because these drugs take you down to a place of a level that consciously, it kind of opens consciousness, he says. Now, I can't, I'm not endorsing it. He says, at that open state, you don't want to go to the work of creating thoughts that have edges, that can cut. It's just, you can see the steps involved in saying harsh things to people. He says, I don't want to use my mind that way. Just like Emoto's flash frozen crystals. They're just, it's not something you want to create in the world. And then, he said the same fellow reporting about his experience, he said, when you allow your mind to bless, to speak generously, kindly, like our two dharmas of gathering in, he said, you can see that the powers of the universe are behind you. The Chinese say, 上天有好生之德, right? Nature prefers life, has a preference for life. It brings into being green plants, children, and kangaroos, as well as snakes and spiders and crocodiles and sharks, as well. And it nurtures, that nature will nurture life. And he said, yeah, that was my experience. Yeah. He said, all I have to do is go positive. Just instead of harsh, he said, never again. I'm never using profanity, ever again. I don't want to create my mind that way. I saw what it did, and so it's like, that's interesting, right? So, kind words, number 2. Number 3 is called collaboration, working together. You want to gather somebody in? Work with them. Make their burden your burden. Right? Cooperation. Don't oppose, of course, but find what the job is and lighten the load. You made a friend. People remember when their physical burden is less because of your effort, they remember. And you've got them close. And then number 4 is called Li Heng. It's called things that benefit, in other words, service. Don't wait to lighten somebody else's load, but you go ahead and initiate things that help others. And what happens? People remember. Best example is right here in Berkeley, Karma Kitchen, right? This is always news. It's so much fun to describe Karma Kitchen when I go out from Berkeley, where we take it for granted, right? Kind of. Karma Kitchen is our version of something called the Seva Kitchen, S-E-V-A, which was a creation of what was then called Charity Focus, is now called Service Based. And Seva Kitchen began in India with these volunteers, and the idea was, they said, we're going to make a pay-it-forward restaurant. And it's a real restaurant where you go and you order real food, and you choose from the menu. I want this, I want this, I want this. Sometimes it's one menu, and like the Krishna restaurants, like Govinda's, and this is what's on today. Krishna, I guess, gives you choice, various where it is. But you go in, pick the food, they bring it to you, and it's delicious, and you eat, and you notice there's a different feeling in the restaurant. There's a kind of a lightheartedness and a joy. And then it's time to pay, time for the bill to come. When the bill comes, pull it out of they give it to you in an envelope. Pull it out of the envelope, and it says, your charge for today's meal is 000. Your meal has been paid for by someone who ate before you. Should you care to give a gift of nutrition, of nutritious food to someone else, you can put whatever you think it's worth in the envelope, pass it on, pay it forward. And that simple act of sharing nutrition, sharing food with others, creates a different atmosphere in the restaurant. So that was the Seva Kitchen idea, and it spread. People who had that experience never forgot it. So they brought it to Berkeley, and Service Space picked it up, said, let's do it here. So they found a restaurant. It was over on Telegraph at the time. It was Taste of Nepal, I think. Is that what it's called? And the gang got it ready, and they found a chef who would do it. I was there for the opening, and blessed it all, and got everybody up. And then it was a real established restaurant, but on Sunday, on that day, it was different. It was pay it forward. Karma Kitchen. They put their signboard out, and people came in and sat down, and the food was delicious because the chef loved the idea and just donated his Sunday. And all of the volunteers did the hard work of serving and washing up and cleaning and all. But nobody bought food. The idea of transaction for food, here's my money, give me the food, didn't happen that day. It was all, you could say, generosity. And they called it, after a while, giftivism, gift economy. And that changes the food. And it takes the energy away from the food and puts it on the interaction with the people. It puts it on this generosity, becomes the thing you feel at the lunch. And that, you can never fill up on it, but its flavor is inexhaustible. It's one of those conundrums, one of those, what do you call it? It's a paradox, right? The flavor of having been given to, the taste of that generosity is infinite, and you can never get enough of it. It's always being given to, it's fresh every time, but it's also inexhaustible. The more you give, the more there is to give. So how wonderful. So Karma Kitchen, it's not every Sunday, and the restaurant moved up to Shattuck, moved right into Gourmet Ghetto over there, not far from Chez Panisse, and the coffee and Pete's and the coffee, the cheese board and all. And oh my, if you go to Karma Kitchen and have food there, people, instead of paying money sometimes, they'll go in and recite poems. Or they'll sing. I've taken my guitar over and sung before. And people will bring in like a bushel of apples that are fresh and yummy and leave them there. Or they'll just, on Saturday, they'll make favors. They'll make all kinds of little wisdom sayings, tie them in a ribbon, tie them in a scroll with a ribbon, and take them in and set them down on the table. And anybody who wants one, can go home and saying from Gandhi or from King or something. So wonderful experience. That's service, right? So Karma Kitchen is one of those places where you see the 4 dharmas of attraction. So giving, kind words, cooperation, and benefit or service. What happens when you experience it is you remember. It prints on you. People give you something, you remember them. They speak to you nicely, you remember it, right? They work with you, you lighten their load, yeah, I remember that. I felt that. Because it wasn't as heavy for me, right? And then it's also this idea of service. What happens is people feel positive towards you. They'll listen to what you say. They're willing to spend some time with you. So that's how a bodhisattva makes an affinity, shan yuan, right? Jie shan yuan. You tie up wholesome ties with people. So the bodhisattva brings those to perfection, right? 4 dharmas of attraction. The topic of giving, that first one, generosity, they say there are 3 main kinds. One is what? One is stuff. You give things. You give food, you give material, you give a blanket when somebody's cold, give a ride to someone, you provide transportation, material giving. Second kind is courage. Somebody's frightened, afraid, and because you exude a kind of confidence, you give a kind of stability to them. You're a rock, and they're needing to grab onto something, and they get past their state. It's called giving of courage, giving of fearlessness. Then there's the giving of dharma, the third kind. You say of all the kinds of giving dharma is the highest kind, the best kind. Because why? You explain principle. You connect root to branch tip. You connect seed to fruit. People go, I see. I see it. I see it myself. That the old story, that it's an idiom. This is an English idiom. If you give somebody an apple, they can eat apples today. If you teach somebody to plant an apple tree, they can eat apples for a lifetime. Right? It used to be fish, right? But we don't do fish. So I teach somebody to fish, right? If you teach somebody to pull out a tofu fish, no, that doesn't work. No. So yeah, apples. If you give somebody a falafel, they can eat once a day. If you're teaching them to make falafel, they can eat falafel the rest of their life. Something like that. So giving that way is like, it has a flavor when you're the giver. And one of my very, very favorite kinds of giving happened right here in this room. In fact, on Saturday nights. It was a giving for a time. I think that time has kind of gone by. Maybe not. Maybe if I tried it again, we could bring it back. The situation was, we had a lot of young families. Young families have kids. So we had, we created a Saturday school that met in the back of the monastery. And the teachers, some of us were the teachers, they're sitting right here among us. And we've been here for 21 years now. So this was in the first decade of our time. And the kids then, there was, I guess we had like a dozen kids. Some were brothers and sisters of one family, some were, we had 3 from one family, and they were solo kids, but they were related cousins and all. So they would come with their parents. And before that, we had, one of the parents had to stay home to be with the kids and the grandparents. So we said, no, that's not the way to do it. Bring the grandparents in. We'll translate into Vietnamese or Chinese for them, and bring the kids in, and we'll give them something to do. So we would have volunteers stay in the back with the kids and teach them Vietnamese and teach them Chinese and teach them. I taught calligraphy. Taught them how to write italic calligraphy. Then we would do snacks and cooking class and remedial math and stuff like what they needed in school. Then 9 o'clock. I'd watch the clock. 9 o'clock, I'd finish the sutra lecture, and it was story time. Story time. And teachers would march the kids in, and they would come in and sit right there. Sit in front. And they were mostly, I think the youngest was about 6 or 7, and the oldest was, at the start, about 12. And that was the right age, And I would, during the week, I would go over to the Berkeley Library, public library, up to what was then the second floor was the children's book section. And I would go through all the books and get some, sort through and find a good children's book. And there's a lot of them. Oh, the illustrations in children's books, unbelievably wonderful. And I would pick one that was suitable and learn it and then come back. And I would say, okay, who's ready for a story? And the kids would they'd look up and they go, ding, fill me up. I'm ready. And then I would tell a story. And the best stories were stories about Asian heroes, if I could find them, and girls, right? So those are the best ones. There's not many. There's an Asian girl as the hero, but they were there. It's a new wave of story writers, girls, guys, write about Asian heroes. So the dragon is terrorizing the town and demanding one young person every year as a tribute to the dragon, And so all the boys are all wimpy, and they wind up getting eaten. And who finally slays the dragon is Mei Mei. Mei Mei goes up there fearlessly and slays the dragon. Tell stories like that. And being the monk authority, but having blue eyes, right? And being a honky monk, Caucasian, telling a story to Asian American kids about an Asian heroine was the real stuff, These kids are like, and they'd be listening and fill me up, And then there is the moment where they got the principle, and there's a flash. That's the moment that I would wait for, when you could see this click. It was tangible when they. If you told it well and didn't rip it off. Storytellers, you learn not to say, and the moral of the story, children, is always tell the truth. And the kids are like, that's not what I heard. What are you talking about? Yeah. You steal it back from them. You let the kids make the conclusion. If you told it well, they get it. They're super tuned in. Okay, and the parents would say, man, you know what happened? He went back home and told Grandpa the story, or anybody who would sit still and listen. Every eyebrow of detail was in the retelling of the story. It's like that story, he told that story 3 times the next week and couldn't wait for the next story to come. And it was like, oh, okay. So what I learned from that experience was we are hungry for stories. We're hungry to hear those stories. Doesn't matter how old or young we are. That why? Number one, and this is what I saw with the kids, is they're learning language. And I would deliberately not dumb down the vocabulary. Now kids, I want you to understand. No. It's like, if I'm using a word or an idea that's beyond them, they will mark it in their head and reach and look left and right. Who's got it? It's like, tell me more. And we make connections, especially when we're young. That's when the brain is doing that most, right? But elders do too. So they're learning language. Number 2 is they're learning values. How do people behave? What's important? What's not important? What happens if you tell a lie? It's like it's there in the story to be shared. Number 3 that was so important is they're learning how the tribe lives. They're learning the culture. Those stories go deep. And now, simple stories don't do it, but if you can tell a story that's got that hits those marks, kids take it in deep. And it provides the landscape of their mind, right? This is what language does and story. Okay, heaven's up here, earth's down here. There's the mountain, here's the lake. Okay, I hear, he said so, right? So what a responsibility for the storyteller, because you're building the reality of everyone who hears it, right? And probably this was the one that was most surprising, that I didn't expect, which is I could tell the same story again, and they were totally ready to hear it again and again. Didn't matter. They never said, we've heard that one, Dharma Master. No, it was like, tell me the story. Why? They've got the full attention of an adult who's telling them a story. And how much time do we adults spend with our own kids? Mostly it's like, stop it, or you're late, come on, we're waiting, a lot of it. Or put that down, or don't bother me, I'm busy, a lot, because you have them all the time, right? You don't run away from being a dad or a mom. I'm privileged because I've got them for 30 minutes here, but I've got them for 30 minutes, and they're like, okay, yeah, tell me more. So all that transaction is happening during storytelling. Teachers know all about this, right? His story is, her story is how the tribe behaved. What happened, right? And you hear it and you go, oh yeah, boy, let's not do that again. That was terrible, that was a big mistake. Why do we go to war? Why do we do it again? So anyway, that was that experience. But it really comes down to that when the kids are drinking in, when there's it's kind of like a light bulb going off, and it's bing, I understand. You can see it. You can see it in the eyes of the kids. When the principle connects with the story, they go, yeah. Okay. I got it. So that's joyful. And that's a kind of giving. It's a giving of dharma. That, kids get it, adults get it, and I think it's how we learn. Nothing to do with intelligence. It has to do with being true, finally. If it's true, we're touching a principle, a pattern that's already there. We're just touching it. And then it goes, bing, lights up. Yep, got it. True. So, for me, that's what keeps me doing this. That's why I'm sitting here in this outfit saying these things, because that's worth it. I can't think of anything I would rather do. then have the blessing of being the person who tells the story. Because why? I love stories. I love listening. And I'm just passing on what I was told. So how joyful that is. So you want to hear one? I got one. And the fun part is this one's got music to it. Now this is not my story. We're going to come back next week to giving kind words, cooperation, and service, 4 dharmas of attraction. But this one is a story actually from the Lotus Sutra. It's an actual story, it's a Buddhist story, which is great. It's a real story. And it's about a bodhisattva whose name was Never Disparage, Changbuqing Pusa. This is a story written by 2 guys at the Zen Center, Greg Fain and Ben Gustin. It's one of my favorites. Alan Sanaki sings this song so well. He introduced it to me. And this is a bodhisattva whose vows, we heard about vows, his vows included never slighting. Disparage means to slight. You never slight somebody. He only praised people, and he said, I don't dare slight you because you're going to be a Buddha someday. That was his thing. That was what he did. And that Lotus Sutra says the people of his time didn't receive that news the way you'd expect it. They didn't get that prediction of Buddhahood the way you'd expect it. What did they do? They hated it. They threw stones at him, kicked him when he was bowing down. They, called him names, chased him away. And so he took a lot of abuse by bowing to people and saying, as he always bowed to them, said, you're going to be a Buddha someday. I'm never going to slight you. I wouldn't say a word against you. You're going to be a Buddha. So I bowed to them. People, chased him away. So what did he do? He backed off a distance and then bowed to them and said, you're going to be a Buddha someday. I'll never slight you. You know that? You're going to be a Buddha someday. And people would shake their fist at him and throw rocks, and he wouldn't quit. He just kept on bowing to them and telling them that they were going to be Buddhas someday. So that was the career of never slighting, never disparaging bodhisattva. And it went on until one day, as he bowed down, he heard the Lotus Sutra being preached in space. And he bowed down with a smile on his face, passed away, having heard the Lotus Sutra coming out of the sky with his last bow. So he may have been the first one to become a Buddha, but after he died that way, with a big smile on his face, everybody who'd been given a prediction by never disparaging bodhisattva said, gee, I wish he'd tell me that again. I kind of miss him, I miss that wacko bowing to me, telling me I'm going to become a Buddha. So that's the story of never slighting bodhisattva. And it comes out of the Lotus Sutra, but it's got this song. And that's now that you know the story, you're going to make sense of the song. And that's when your eyes go bing when you get it. Okay. You have, anybody who wants to join me can go. I will never disparage you or keep you at arm's length. You only see your weaknesses, I only see your strengths. I would never despise you or put you down in any way, 'cause it's clear to me, I can plainly see you'll be a Buddha someday. Amitabha. Now the original song said, I love you, but I thought, no, Amitabha. There's a book called the Lotus Sutra that you really ought to know about. A holy book that has the power to erase all fear and doubt. And the book tells the story of a man who means the world to me. He could just as well have been a woman, except for male hegemony. But they call him the Bodhisattva, never disparage, the Bodhisattva, never despise. I'm making it my ambition to see the world through his pure eyes. I will never disparage you or keep you at arm's length. You only see your weaknesses, I only see your strength. I would never despise you or put you down in any way. It's clear to me, I can plainly see you'll be a Buddha someday. Amitabha. Now the Bodhisattva, never disparaging from countless kalpas in the past, in the time of the counterfeit dharma, was something of an outcast. The monks and nuns of his time were known for their arrogance and vanity. These were the folks who exercised great power and authority. But my boy never concerned himself if they treated him like a freak. He bowed to everybody equally, and these were the words he'd speak. I will never disparage you or keep you at arm's length. You only see your weaknesses, but I only see your strengths. I would never despise you or put you down in any way. It's clear to me, I can plainly see you'll be a Buddha someday. Amitabha. One more time. There we go. He never read or recited the scriptures much. He only liked to practice respect. But the monks and nuns of his time didn't meet it like you might expect. Instead, they cursed him and they reviled him, and they wished that he would go. 'Cause they all had self-esteem issues like everybody else I know. They beat him and they pelted him with clubs and stones. They tried to drive him away. He'd just run off a safe distance, and these were the words he'd say. Here we go. Can you do it? I would never disparage you or keep you at arm's length. You only see your weaknesses, I only see your strengths. I would never despise you or put you down in any way. It's clear to me, I can plainly see you be a Buddha someday. Amitabha. Okay, here's the last chapter of the story. Pretty good for the Lotus Sutra, I must say. So it went on for years and years. He was the target of scorn and abuse. Still our hero never shed no tears or wondered what's the use. Till he came to the end of his natural lifespan, lay down fixing to die. He heard the Lotus Sutra being preached up in the sky, and his life was extended for millions of years. He's living to this day. And in the pages of the Lotus Sutra, you can still hear him say, I will never disparage you or keep you at arm's length. You only see your weaknesses, I only see your strengths. I would never despise you or put you down in any way. It's clear to me, I can plainly see you'll be a Buddha someday. Amitabha, Amitabha. That's called our hero, and that's a true story from the Lotus Sutra about a bodhisattva who became a bodhisattva simply by giving people predictions to Buddhahood and bowing to them. would think? One of the best things I can imagine to do with bowing, like Ali. When I tried that, we were out there bowing, and we bowed to a place called Point Mugu Air Force Base down in Fort Hueneme, and the watch captain came out with his sergeant at arms, his MP, in a jeep, and told us that the airmen of the base had requested permission to strafe us on the ground because they thought we were hexing the Air Force Base. Not only did they not accept our bowing as a sign of goodwill and world peace, they thought they were doing the world a favor by wiping us out with aircraft machine guns. So the captain said, we told them not a good idea, probably not, no permission granted. So just want to let you fellas know. By the way, my wife baked you some cookies, he said. Here and there. So that was, by golly. Okay, more next week. We need to transfer merit. One of our Buddhist nuns, Bhikshuni Heng Hui, is having some serious kidney problems. Would appreciate some transference of merit, see if she can't get over this problem that she's experiencing. So there's one place to transfer merit. Another place to transfer merit would be to the residents, the human and four-legged residents of Louisiana. The water rose so fast, they say. The rain stopped, but the water kept rising. Say some of the 40,000 homes that have been wiped out by the rising water. And those are folks just like us, who, when it was Katrina, it was slow in coming, but the response was nationwide. There's thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of people who have nowhere to go. Now, we'll see. We'll see if people around the country open their homes to their people and their pets, the animals, who are just traumatized, lost it all. Climate change is happening? No, not human-sponsored climate change. Not true. That's just some scientists who make a profit out of writing books about it, right? Come up with that theory. No such thing as climate change. Fires over here and floods over there. Phil? Yeah. Fires in California. That's a place to transfer merit. San Bernardino fire, I saw pictures of it yesterday. It's so scary to see fire move faster than a human can run. It covers ground because it gets airborne. The fire, it's called the Clayton Fire, which landed right on top of the lake fire, the valley fire, last year's fire. Same folks lost their houses, rebuilt it. Even Habitat for Humanity lost its office this time in Lower Lake. Fire came so fast. So that's 30 miles from City of 10,000 Buddhas. We saw all the smoke on Sunday last. And, by golly. So, if people broke it, people can mend it, although time has run out. But we can still put our hearts to that place where we put the fire in our hearts out, but not too much water either. On the last page of your songbook here, right here, this is the songs. Right here, dedication of merit. That's the verse that we use to send out the goodness from our investigation of the sutra to a world that can use it. as one and radiant with light. Share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. So today was Ulambana. This was our celebration of a filial child who did not forget his mother. Even after she passed away, he remained connected to her in his heart and found a way to end her suffering, which was grievous, it turns out, as mom had fallen. And it's a powerful story that has been retold and retold and retold for 25 centuries to the present. And I witnessed the story being retold to a new audience in China 3 weeks ago, of young people who saw it in the form of an opera, a Chinese opera. And the story touched their hearts. It was fresh. 25 centuries later, that story still's got juice to make us remember, oh yeah, where's mom? I wonder, I don't know. If I knew, could I stand it? What would I do? So the hero, his name is, in Chinese is Mu Lian. In Sanskrit is Maha Madhyayana, great Madhyayana. And in short is Madhyayana. So he can see past the limits of our vision. He has what's called the Deva eye. And he looks down and sees his mom suffering in the hells as a ghost. And the sutra that tells this story gives a little detail that's unforgettable. You go, right, that's what it's like being a ghost in the hells. He's got the ability to feed her, and she's a hungry ghost, and the hungry ghosts have these stomachs like a bass drum and a throat like a needle. No amount of food can ever satisfy the hunger, you know. And so he sends her a bowl of food, wants to feed her right away. And the sutra says she got the food and grabbed it with her fist and hid it from the other ghosts like this, put it in her mouth, and it turned to coals and ashes and burned her tongue. And you go, being a ghost, what's it like being a ghost? Even though you have food, the food spontaneously turns to ashes. That's your karma as a ghost, as a hungry ghost. And you see, she's creating the karma of a ghost, which is, here's food. Instead of saying, who's hungry? She goes, like that. Ghost-like behavior. Don't anybody see this, because I want it all. My son gave it to me. That's what ghosts do, and that's the retribution. So there's cause and effect right there in that little detail. You can see her creating more karma as a ghost right there. You know. So That's what we celebrate. And the Buddha saves the day and takes advantage of the monks all being together. They've come together at the end of the rains retreat. During the rains retreat, it's the last day. So everybody makes offerings. The monks recite mantras and recite their vows. And the karma they create ends the misery of those, his mother and the beings around. So Madhyayana says, wow, that's great, it worked. I'm so happy. Can it work for everybody else? The Buddha says, good job. You're not selfish. It does work for everybody. So every lunar 15th day of the 7th month, come and do this. And you can end the suffering of 7 generations past of ancestors, he says. So it's a powerful, powerful teaching. And to see these young people in Shijiazhuang, in this town, see the opera based on this and go, wow, that's really noble. Where's my mom? You know, and if she's still with us, that's great. If your mom is with you, give her an extra big hug and say, you know, Mom, don't create the karma that makes you a ghost, please, because I don't have Madhyayana's powers. You know, but thank you for being such a good mom, and I want to help you be a better mom. I'll be a better daughter, you know, better son. So you can say that if you have a mom around. Ooh, lucky. So that's the holiday we celebrated today. It's a Buddhist holiday, and it went out into the world and touched people's hearts wherever it went. Powerful story. So we're at that turning point of the seasons now. And summer is closing in. Autumn is on the way. Not officially. September 22nd is the autumnal equinox, when days and nights are equally long, but we're getting there fast. We're a couple weeks away from actual autumn, but we feel it, right? And school's coming back, and Dharma Realm Buddhist University is commenced classes this week. And in 2 weeks, we're going to go back to our autumn schedule here. At Berkeley Buddhist Monastery, we'll have events almost every night for people to enjoy. The Sutra lecture will continue unchanged. Marty Verhoeven will start his Sixth Patriarch Sutra lecture on Friday nights. And Sundays, we go up to City of 10,000 Buddhas to explain the 10 transferences. It would be really nice if that could go online. Certainly we got the technology to do it. It's just kind of the will is not there. We have Wi-Fi up there now. Before we didn't, so, you know, why not? That Buddha Hall is going strong all day, every day. Wouldn't it be great if that could go online? Maybe Berkeley has to lead the way to get the City of 10,000 Buddhas practices available to people who would want to watch. Our Dharma sister Madalena Tam, uses Weixing, uses WeChat. WeChat is the powerful media in China. And she puts Shifu's talks and songs from Berkeley Monastery and some of my talks out online for people on WeChat. You know how many people watch every week? 200,000 per week. That's China scale. 200,000 hits a week. It's called Shenhua Jiangtang, right? Master Shenhua's Dharma. That's a lot of people. But for China, that's, yeah, it's good, you know. Not special, you know. So, by golly, WeChat works in China. It's stable, everybody's got it. YouTube doesn't go there. So, because that's part of Google, and Google doesn't go there. So our talks here don't transfer to China. But if you can take what we do here and put it on WeChat, by golly, why don't we get CTTB online? There's Dharma events. There's Avatamsaka Sutra recitation every day. There's the Great Compassion Repentance every day. There's morning ceremony, evening ceremony, Sutra lecture, Sherpa's voice every day. Be good. You know, go further. We're only held back by our initiative, or lack of it. So. Okay, what else do we have to announce? Anything? Yeah, class is coming up. Okay. Earth Store Bodhisattva recitation session at City of 10,000 Buddhas begins on the 28th. Some of us are going up. Mr. Yap is going to go up and take part. Who else is going? Do we have? Okay, so maybe people will know. Okay, Gokuk is going up to take part. Good. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Good. Okay. So today Ulambana went really well. We have a problem here at the Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. We're too small. We have more people than we can handle today, now, pretty regularly when there's an event. And it's a good problem to have. And the way we deal with it is we tell people to pay attention to the person next to you. Do they have everything they need? Food? Do they know where the bathroom is? Do they know about parking and things? And when you look to your left and right and pay attention to how they're doing, you don't feel like it's too tight. If you're only concerned with your own stomach, it's like, oh my God, it's like too many people here, and I can't stand it. I'm not going to come back here. It's too crowded, But if it's like, oh, let's see. Are you new? What's your name? Now the food it's almost, we're next. Okay, wait, now we can go. So that's just an attitude change, and suddenly it's big enough. But it would be nice to have more room. Who's got a spare monastery? Anybody got one? Well, gee, you want to build another floor, or do we go down? We might either dig or add a floor. We're out of space. Dining room. We had to open up the parking lot, which is now called the garden restaurant. No, the garden dining room. And the parking lot sounds like, no, I don't want to go there, But it was really clean and nice tarp over the top and a lot of food. And it was full. And so was our dining room. Full. Double full. What do you do if you only had the one? Like half too small. So 21 years in this location, and we are out of room. There's no room for more monks, for example. And more monks want to come. Dharma Master lies in the annex over the next door. Yeah. So by golly, we're ready for a bigger church. Or maybe our own monastery. But that's a long haul to build from scratch. What do you do? It's just maybe tell the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, you fix it. Guan Yin Pusa. We need a bigger space. So, yeah. We don't want to go to San Jose. I'm going to keep it up here. San Jose has too many Buddhist places. So, not. We could do Marin. Marin's nice. Yeah. Maybe a little closer to the coast. No. You know where it's going to be? Oakland. Fruitvale. Alameda. Now you're talking. We could do Alameda. Definitely. Alameda used to be so nice you didn't have to lock your doors. Right? Only recently. Right, Gucci? When did people keep their doors unlocked? Like just not too long ago, right? Still very good. Sometimes they forget to lock the car. Come back, it's all gone. No, it's still there. So Alameda, find a bigger church. We'll do Alameda. Marin? Big one? Big enough? Then that'd be big. Just big enough. Bigger. Yeah. Yeah, can't be. Yeah, Alameda might go underwater. What about that? The bay is rising. The Irai was arising and the Jin was getting low. The banks of the Ohio. Yeah, so, by golly, yeah, we need to consider that possibility. I didn't plan to say these words, but it was really clear today. People were coming in and poor Mr. Yap was like saying, okay, you go up to the balcony, here's an old person, they can't do the stairs. What do we do? You move over here, we got an old person. You sit him there. And a lot of headaches trying to get everybody in here. And I'm in here saying, now, it's your attitude that counts, you know. We're all maneuver. It's not a weiji, it's a jihui, you know. It's not a crisis, it's an opportunity. It's just, what are you going to do? You know, you could see people going like, so you're going to ask for my chair? It's my chair, you know. So, boy, oh boy. So, but the food was delicious and so abundant. Wow, all that incredible. Where'd that food come from? It all, you know. Long life came in big aluminum trays, the string beans. I ate a double helping of long life string beans today. Yummy. And all the Vietnamese sweets. Those, you know, we take it for granted, but I watch on Instagram and people, you know, take a picture of that. What's that tapioca dessert? And they put it out on Instagram and go, oh, look, they had today my favorite Vietnamese dessert, you know, and it was one of 50 courses today. Just there, kind of, you know, and we go, yeah, I'll have some of that, you know. But for people who don't have it, who are in Cleveland or in, you know, Kansas City, it's like, oh, yeah, I remember that. Oh, if only I could have a cup of that, you know. And all that delicious food is just there. Pretty amazing. So, gee whiz, we're going to look back on this time and think, yeah, remember when it was so crowded we couldn't even move? How much fun that was, you know? Yeah, but we could use a bigger place. 普贤菩萨，你听到了没有啊? Okay, just be sincere and see what happens. Okay, so see you all next week. 识道之进，非道之退，在善而从，无善而改. You have to learn Chinese to know what I just said. If it's the Tao, advance. If it's not the Tao, retreat. Find what's good and follow it. Find what's not good and change it inside. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. Nam